In a quiet American town called Hollow Creek, Pennsylvania, there lived an old woman named Eleanor Whitmore. She was 72 years old, thin as winter branches, with silver hair always tied in a loose bun. Her house sat at the very end of Maple Street, old, wooden, and ignored, just like her. People passed her every day but never truly saw her. To the town, Eleanor was just another lonely old woman who walked slowly to the grocery store, counted coins at the counter, and smiled politely even when treated like air. Kids laughed behind her back. Adults pretended she didn't exist. But what no one knew, was that Eleanor Whitmore had once lost everything. And she never forgot who took it from her. 30 years earlier, Eleanor wasn't poor. She wasn't weak. She and her husband Thomas Whitmore owned a small construction company. It wasn't big, but it was honest. They built homes for working families, repaired roofs after storms, and helped neighbors without asking for much in return. They had one son, Daniel Whitmore, a bright boy with dreams bigger than Hollow Creek. Life was simple. Life was good. Until Richard Hale came into their lives. Richard Hale was a businessman from the city, sharp suit, polished shoes, fake smile. He promised Thomas a partnership that would change everything. "Trust me," Richard said, shaking Thomas's hand. "We'll build something big together." Eleanor didn't trust him. There was something cold behind Richard's eyes. But Thomas was hopeful. And hope can be dangerous. Within a year, Richard manipulated contracts, forged signatures, and framed Thomas for financial fraud. The courts believed Richard the rich man with lawyers, not the honest builder from a small town. Thomas Whitmore was sentenced to prison. 2 years later, he died there from a heart attack. Eleanor lost her husband, her company, her home savings. And soon after, she lost her son. Daniel was 21 when he tried to confront Richard Hale. Young, angry, broken. Richard's men cornered Daniel behind a bar one rainy night. The police called it a robbery gone wrong. Eleanor knew better. She buried her son next to her husband. That night, standing alone between two graves, Eleanor made a promise, not to God, not to the law, but to herself. "I will live long enough to make them pay." Eleanor disappeared from society, but not from purpose. She worked small jobs, cleaned offices, babysat, lived quietly. She watched Richard Hale from a distance as he became powerful, a real estate tycoon, respected, untouchable. She learned. She waited. While others saw an old woman fading away, Eleanor was sharpening her mind. Revenge wasn't anger anymore. It was patience. At 69, Eleanor volunteered at a charity funded by Richard Hale. Irony is cruel. She became invisible again, exactly where she needed to be. She overheard conversations, saw documents left unattended, learned secrets. Richard Hale was not clean. Money laundering, bribery, illegal land deals, and Eleanor had time, something rich men never think an old woman has. Eleanor anonymously mailed evidence to investigative journalists. Nothing happened at first. So she leaked more. Then more. She carefully framed information so it looked like it came from inside Richard's own company. Paranoia crept in. Executives started turning on each other. Partners backed out. The stock fell. Richard aged 10 years in one. Eleanor watched the news every night, smiling quietly. One afternoon, Richard Hale saw Eleanor in the charity office. He stared at her. "You look familiar," he said. Eleanor smiled gently. "I get that a lot. That night, Richard couldn't sleep. Memories returned. A builder. A wife. A son. Fear whispered his name. Eleanor arranged one last move. She contacted federal investigators, this time not anonymously. She handed them everything. When Richard Hale was arrested, cameras filled the streets. As he was escorted in handcuffs, he saw Eleanor standing across the road. She stepped closer. "Do you remember Thomas Whitmore?" she asked softly. Richard's face went pale. "And my son Daniel," she continued. Tears filled his eyes, not of regret, but terror. "I waited," Eleanor said. 30 years. Richard Hale died in prison 2 years later. Alone. Forgotten. Eleanor lived to 85. When she passed away, a letter was found addressed to no one in particular. It read, "Revenge didn't give me my family back. But justice gave my soul peace. Never underestimate the quiet ones. We remember everything."